The Armenoid Phenotype.
But before we get too deep into the video, first I want to tell you guys about my social media platforms. So I have a Clubhouse account and we can actually talk to one another on it. I also host Clubhouse rooms every now and then where I might talk about history and genetics of the Middle East and Africa. I have a Twitter page, a Facebook account, and a Facebook page, as well as a Instagram, all titled The Hebrew of Israel. And what I typically do on these platforms is post upcoming videos as well as slides for my presentations. And so just be on the lookout for all of that on my social media platforms. And if you want to support me financially for the channel, you can look at my Patreon as well as my PayPal and my GoFundMe. And with all of that out of the way, let's begin with the video.
I mentioned the word Armanoid the first time dealing with my haplogroup J video, the very first J video. And from then on, I've mentioned it several times. But now let's actually learn about this phenotype and everything about it. So, Armanoid. Short-headed and high-skulled type with fleshy features, a flat occiput and hooked nose, often black-haired with light brown skin, common in the mountain ranges of the mountain regions of Asia Minor, especially Armenia and Anatolia, was found in ancient Sumerians, Babylonians like the Kassites, Hittites, and Cretans around 4000 BCE. So this is from Anthropology, and it's basically dealing with the Armenoid phenotype, and it reads, Armenoid. Other characteristics are hair color, dark brown to black, usually wavy to curly in form, and roughly straight. The head is broad, brachycephalic, or brachycephalic. They are concentrated in Turkey, Syria, and Palestine, Iraq, Iran, and Balkan countries. Their typical representatives are ancient Hittites, and we know that Hittites are non-Semitic Indo-European Anatolian people. And actually, that's one thing I want to make note of when it came to this source dealing with the Armenoid. Here are all the references. Ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, Hittites, and Cretans, they're all non-Semitic Indo-European or Caucasian peoples. Even when it comes to the Babylonians, it's likely referring to the Babylonians of the Kassites, who were a mixture of Iranian and Hurrians. And keep in mind that Kassite dynasty of Babylon ruled for 500 years. It's the Babylon that we typically think of, whether we know it or not, because that Kassite Babylon created the Babylonian culture that we know of. So Hittites and Sumerians and Cretans, that's all Indo-European or Caucasian peoples. So that's what we're dealing with when it comes to the Armenoid phenotype. So this is from contributions to the Anthropology of Iran, and it reads, Houghton, page 504 through 505, defines the Armenoid type as follows. And I'm just going to read some of it right here, even though I don't have it underlined. But nose form is convex, high-bridged, and long, and often rather wide, and that's basically talking about a aquiline nose, basically a hook nose. I'm just going to stop right there. Skipping down, head form is brachycephalic. The hair color is black or brown. The eyes are brown. Skin color, olive or brunette white. Hair form, usually wavy, sometimes curly or straight. And distribution, concentrated in the Near East, Asia Minor, Syria, Persia, common in Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, largely present in urban populations of Russia, Poland, Hungary, Austria, the Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Germany, United States. Typical peoples, most Armenians, which is kind of where the name comes from. So most Armenians, Turks, and Syrians, many Persians being Iranians, and Ashkenazi Jews. Continuing, it reads, the so-called Armenoid type is defined by Haydn, page 27, under the Eurasiatic brachiocephals as Anatolian Armenian, dark hair, tawny, white skin, and medium stature. Very brachiocephalic, a prominent aquiline nose with a depressed tip and large wings is very characteristic. Scattered in Anatolia, Armenia, the ancient Hittites were typical members of this race. So looking at Hittites is a good example of getting an idea of an Armenoid phenotype as well. So now let's deal with the word aquiline, because I say it a lot. So let's get the definition of what I'm talking about. So an aquiline nose, also called a Roman nose or hooked nose, is a human nose with a prominent bridge, giving it the appearance of being curved or slightly bent. The word aquiline comes from the Latin word aquilis, eagle-like, an allusion to the curved beak of an eagle. So here's like an example of that. It's like a curvature, like hooked. According to anthropologist Jan Sevlovsky, it is most frequently found among members of the Oriental race and Armenoid race, Oriental meaning Eastern. It is also often seen in the Mediterranean race and Drenid race, where it is known as the Roman nose, and also and when found among Italians and Southern French, Portuguese, and Spanish. I think that's important to note because this phenotype, for some reason, some people, but not all, but some people do, for some odd reason, consider the hooked nose type to be Semitic, and that's not really the case. It's seen among Mediterranean Europeans as well. Like they said, sometimes it's even called the Roman nose, Romans being Latin, Indo-European people. So it's not a Semitic nose. It's not a Semitic type. It's just really, in all actuality, it's a Caucasian, specifically Armenian or Armenoid type. It's not really Semitic in origin, although you might find it among Semitic speakers today. It likely didn't originate with Semitic people. So we have a good idea of the Armenoid type, basically white to tan skin, dark-haired and dark-eyed with a hooked nose, or aquiline. But now let's look into ancient human populations of the Near East, described with the Armenoid phenotype. So one group mentioned are the Sumerians. So let's look at the Sumerians. So as you can see with the Sumerians, a non-Semitic people, they have this arched nose, as they said, and you see it in most, if not all, of their artwork. This long, hooked, nosed type is seen right here. Here's the Sumerian cuneiform, and they purposely, made themselves look like this aquiline nose. Some people might say triangular, or this curvature of a nose. You see this in their statues. You see this in their tablets. There's some more tablets that depicted all of the people like this, with this aquiline nose. Same thing with their statues. And here are some figurines, literally down here, called the Armanoid. This is also brachiocephalic, as they said, basically a round head. It's very round. It's not dolichocephalic, i.e. a long skull, but it's more rounded. Here are some more. This is drawings that they made of themselves. Here's a tablet over here, but they do depict themselves with this very long curvature of a nose. Here are more tablets, more depictions, Sumerians. Here's another statue. Here's another tablet. You can see the Sumerian right here, the Sumerian cuneiform right here as evidence. Here are a bunch of Sumerian statues with the way the Sumerians depicted themselves, these non-Semitic people of the Near East. This is how they depicted themselves. Here's some more curvature, as they said, curvature of the nose, aquiline, hooked. And this is how Semites, well, not Semites, non-Semites depicted themselves. Here's more. So another ancient people mentioned with the Armenoid phenotype are the Hittites, an Anatolian European people. So let's look at the Hittites. So this is here, Hittite from Syria, early inhabitants of Western Asia, and again, Anatolian Europeans. To call this phenotype Semitic would not be 100% accurate. These are Anatolian European peoples with this aquiline features, this brachiocephalic round-headed features, and beards, by the way. Here are more Hittite statues, more Hittite tablets and wall reliefs or murals, and they depicted themselves like much like the Sumerians with this aquiline nose. This is from Egypt right here of a Hittite, and this is the Hittite, their own art depictions of themselves. So I do find it interesting how the Egyptians kind of got the phenotype right, got it correct to the way that the Hittites depicted themselves. Here's another Egyptian Hittite depiction. See his features, and this is how the Hittites depict themselves. You see their features with the long beards, long hair, aquiline nose, etc. There's another Hittite, but it kind of got broken, but still you can see the features from the way the Hittites depicted themselves as well. There's another Hittite, and there's another Hittite, one from Egypt, one from Anatolia. And the way they depicted this particular person was with a really big nose. And here's a drawings made by archaeologists or anthropologists when it comes to Hittites. See the features, the way that they drew them when they looked at some of the wall reliefs. So what I find interesting about the Armenoid phenotype is that anciently, it seems that it was associated with Indo-Europeans and Caucasians. After all, keep in mind, Hittites are ancient Indo-European of Anatolia, and the Sumerians are isolated population that spoke likely a Caucasian language. Just to recap, Hittite, a member of an ancient Indo-European people who appeared in Anatolia at the beginning of the second millennium BCE. By 1340 BCE, they had become one of the dominant powers in the Middle East. Dealing with the Sumerians, this reads, but Piori Michael Skolowski, an Assyrianologist at the University of Michigan, notes that Hurrian, like Sumerian, is a language unrelated to Semitic or Indo-European tongues that dominated the region during and after the 3rd millennium BC. Hurrian and Sumerian are very similar to one another. So, what modern populations have this Armenoid phenotype? So let's start with the people that the name comes from, the Armenians. So Armenian, widespread type found in its most specialized form in the mountains of Asia Minor, associated with the ancient Cretans and the Hittite kingdom, common in Armenians and Turks of the mountainous ranges like Tartarus, and then it's seen in various other groups. But physical traits is light brown skin, wavy, dark brown hair, and hyper brachiocephalic. So here is a statue of a Soviet-era composer, and you see the way that they kind of basically made him look. So here are just some Armenian peoples. They do have tan skin and dark hair and dark eyes, but some can be very light skinned, still with this aquiline nose, dark hair. Here are Armenians, dark haired, dark eyed people. with a convex nose, looking much like the Hittites actually. Their phenotype does match quite considerably with that of the Hittites. Just more of their features so you can get a good understanding. Dark-haired and ranging in various skin tones. They, as I said, they're not just white, but they're also tawny in a sense. Tawny being a very light brown. And here are Armenians and traditional Armenian clothing. And here are more. And their phenotype kind of does resemble that of what people would call a Middle Easterner or a Semite. This man right here can easily be confused for, let's say, an Arab, but no, he's Armenian. He speaks Indo-European language. His people have always been Indo-European from the beginning. But as we read earlier from previous studies, many Middle Easterners are basically just a branch of Caucasians, like Armenians, or Northern Indo-Europeans, like Iranians. And here are some Armenian women. They have a very particular look to themselves. Here's Armenian women and the man in traditional garb, except for the man. So Armenians are the best example of the Armenoid phenotype, but other groups have it as well, such as Iranians. So Indo-Iranid, relatively recent contact type with a position intermediate between Indo-Brachioid and Iraniid, widespread in Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan, reaching to northern India in the east and Turkey in the west. Light to medium brown skin, straight or wavy, brown, black, plentiful hair. So here are some Iranian women. See their features. Here is he either is still the president of Iran or he's the former president of Iran. I can't remember, but he is a politician in Iran. And you can see from his skin tone, he is tanned or tawny, as they might say. Here are Iranian women, also tawny with dark hair, dark eyes. Here's an Iranian actress, and here are just Iranian people. You can see their hair can be kind of, I would say, frizzy or maybe curly-esque. This woman right here looks like she can easily be misinterpreted as an Arab or as someone from the Middle East, but I would still say yes, Iranians are Middle Easterners, but we do have to understand the difference between Middle Eastern populations and that not all Middle Easterners are Semitic. Many Middle Easterners can also be European and have this phenotype. That's why I find it kind of interesting how when we say that Middle Easterners, they're not black or they're not Nigerian or German, and again, that is true, but it doesn't discount them being Indo-European nonetheless, because Indo-Europeans were in the ancient Near East, and Iranians are just a branch of Indo-Europeans, Indo-European Near Easterners. So I still would classify them as European, even if they don't look German. And I still wouldn't classify this phenotype as a Semitic phenotype. So we looked at the Iranians as another good example, but let's also touch on a last group, which is the Kurds, who are smack dab in the center of the Middle East. So Kurds, by the way, are technically a branch of Iranians to a kind of a certain extent. We talked about the Kurds. They're a mixture of Hurrians and Iranians. And as you can see, they have also the same features, no different from an Iranian or an Armenian. And they too can be tawny with dark hair and a convex nose. And they too have the features that folks might say is Semitic. Again, this phenotype does not have to only be with Semites. but just get a good visualization of what we're dealing with when it comes to the various Middle Eastern populations. So what I find interesting about the Armenoid phenotype, that it's often the phenotype dubbed Middle Eastern. And I agree with this. And I want to make that clear. I don't disagree with it being Middle Eastern. I mean, it's clearly among Middle Eastern people. But with that being said, it is geographically among the Indo-European and Caucasian inhabitants of the Middle East. That part is also important to mention as well when discussing this phenotype. So I will say that the Armenoid phenotype is a branch of the Indo-European Caucasian physical traits. And with that being said, again, I would still say Middle Easterners, they're not Nigerian, at least that Armenoid phenotype is not Nigerian. The Armenoid phenotype is not blue-eyed, blonde-haired, German. But as I said, just because it fits in the middle of a quote-unquote Nigerian and quote-unquote Scandinavian doesn't make it any less Indo-European, doesn't make it any less Caucasian. It is still that phenotype that would have originated with ancient Indo-European peoples like Hittites or ancient Caucasian peoples like Sumerians. It doesn't have to be, the default basically doesn't have to be Semitic. I disagree with the Armenoid phenotype default being Semitic. It's not. If you look at the ancient peoples who had it. Anciently, Armenoid was associated with more European like Hittites and more Caucasians like Sumerians. So I know I'm saying that over and over again, but I'm just trying to really like break this mold that we kind of have, this bias we kind of have in our minds. And basically, geographically, the Hittites were in Anatolia and northern Syria, and the Sumerians were in Iraq, southern Mesopotamia, and of course, Iranians are in Iran. So logically, it would make sense. You see these phenotypes still there in those parts of the world, in that region. The same thing with the Caucasian genome. Makes sense. You're going to see Caucasian DNA in the Middle East since there was ancient Caucasian populations in the Middle East. But the default doesn't have to be that it's Semitic, because clearly we see very early on it wasn't Semitic. It was entirely different ethnic group. So with that being said, was this phenotype the only phenotype of the ancient Middle Easterners? Or was there different phenotypes in the Middle East prior to the Armenoids? Or even a better question, is the Armenoid phenotype Proto-Semitic? But this is where we'll end the Armenoid phenotype. With that being said, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe and share the video and click the bell. And leave a comment for any questions you might have. And don't forget to follow my social media accounts that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And with all of that out of the way, have a great day and shalom.